I grew up on Staten Island, so that's home for me. I went to school there straight from first grade through college. I did my undergrad work there, and the area is completely devastated. My parents are currently without power. Their garage is ruined. They have 2 cars destroyed. Their foyer is destroyed. They have about 15 40-foot boats sitting in their backyard and in the surrounding streets. And I consider them really lucky. Our neighbors didn't make it out alive. They fled during the storm and were overtaken by the surge and didn't survive. I'm sure you guys have heard some of the stories about that woman who had the 2 little boys who were snatched from her grasp. Many of my parents' friends are in the process of being rescued via little canoes that they're basically pulling down the streets, because it's the only way to get to some of these homes where these people are stranded. They're finding little children. They're finding tons of pets, of course, who have been displaced around the island. And there's lots of looting going on. The National Guard is out there, so you have a 7 o'clock curfew. My parents need to be inside the house. A house was looted very, very nearby where they are. Some of the neighborhoods that have been destroyed are neighborhoods like Tottenville and Great Kills, and if anyone's familiar with Staten Island, I'm sure they've seen a lot of the photos out there of the devastation. News that the marathon will go on has not hit these residents terribly well. We know there are generators that are powering media tents right now for the marathon that could be powering 400 homes in Staten Island. And the latest news I got was that there are a lot of protests. Marathon runners and other residents in Staten Island will be protesting the marathon, and instead of running the marathon, a lot of these runners are going to be giving their aid to the residents of the island.
So, Jedediah, let me ask you this. This was an area, Zone A area that was told to evacuate, but your parents stayed.
My parents stayed. The reason is that they live in a condominium complex. Their particular house is elevated off the ground. The garage is beneath them, and you have to go up numerous stairs to get to, which I'm now grateful for having had to climb all those years, because the water didn't enter their house. A lot of those ground level apartments, people did evacuate, and those who didn't, that was the couple that died tragically because they got nervous at the last minute. The water was flooding their apartment and they had to flee. But yeah, this was an A zone, which is an evacuation zone, and I urge people all the time, if you're in an evacuation zone, you should go. I mean, my parents have said that I spoke to them today, and they said if we are ever in an evacuation zone again, we will leave. We will not.
Well, you said part of the reason why they didn't evacuate was because they'd had previous warnings that didn't come to fruition. And then also now we have the stories about looting, so people feel like they really need to stand their ground and protect their property.
As of right now, my parents feel like we can't leave now. There are people coming to survey the damage. They want to know what's happening to their house. The garage is destroyed. There's, worried about mold. They're worried about other aspects of their property, and they're worried about intruders. So they were told if you leave a light on in your window, a candle lit, or something that you can indicate to these people that there is someone home, they will pass by your house and go to, if they're going to, cause some trouble, go to a house where people aren't residing in that home. So I'm, of course, nervous for them and for a whole bunch of the residents, but I'm hoping that they can pull through. It's just, when you go out there, it really looks like a war zone, to be completely honest. And I don't think that the Red Cross was initially getting there. A lot of these people didn't have the assistance that they should have gotten in those first 48 hours.
Let's ask about that. You were tweeting as the storm was overtaking Staten Island, and you tweeted about the Red Cross, and you said, hey, at Red Cross, I think we have it on the screen here, you need to get more people out to Staten Island. Many are stranded due to flooding, no power, limited resources, and I understand that the borough president, James Molinaro, has called the Red Cross an absolute disgrace.
And after he said that, they sent about 10 cars full of all sorts of products that people would need, clothing and food. So there was some response.
Do we know where they've been?
I have no idea. I have no idea where they've been. If you watch some of the footage that was on ABC News, CNN covered it, you would see these people standing on Highland Boulevard, which is basically like the 6th Avenue of 6th Avenue in Manhattan is like Highland Boulevard in Staten Island, and just saying there's been no one here to help us. There's no food, there's no shelter, there's no one coming to our rescue up until this late date. So it's been tragic.
I mean, this is one of the boroughs of the largest city in America. I mean, it is quite a stark reminder, at least it has been for me. I obviously, my neighborhood, it's not nearly as bad as it was in Staten Island, but it was part of the blackout zone. And one of my extended family members lived in a place where water rose all the way up in the lobbies. I have to say that it's our security and our food supply and our electricity. These are things that we all take for granted very much, but they can disappear very quickly, actually. Right. And I do think that, particularly when you live in a place like New York that has a police force of 45,000, and obviously we're used to all these conveniences and technology, it has been a stark reminder. It's been amazing to me that it's been as slow as it is to get back. And also, when you walk around downtown Manhattan right now at night, as I have done,
creepy.
It's like a ghost town down there.
It feels deeply unsafe.
Yeah,
it really does.
I live in the West Village, and I went home last night for the first time. Fortunately, our very generous boss had been putting us up in a hotel during the week so we could get to work and be warm and safe. Last night, no hotels because of the marathoners and everything that's happening this weekend. So I went home. Total blackness, no cell, no phone, no lights, no heat, no hot water, nothing. But something that did strike me that, unfortunately hasn't been the case in Staten Island, but downtown, you could walk past storefronts that were perfectly intact. And I was thinking, wow, people are really being civil and they're really, minding themselves, because there'd be no way to call the cops if somebody crashed that window and stole everything inside.
The upper half of the city has power. If it didn't, though, Will, I think we'd be in much worse shape. If the whole island of Manhattan was in darkness, it would be much worse.
As the days have gone by, I almost have a sense of survivor's guilt. I mean, I live in New York, too, but my New York is very different from your New York. I mean, it is virtually untouched, aside from some trees down. The power never went out. The water still runs, and the stores are all open. And it's taken a couple days to fully appreciate that 30 blocks to the south of me is a completely different place. And, of course, just across the water, as you talked about, Jedediah, is a horribly different place. I'm curious if you can tell us, I'm sure you've talked to your folks, so they go to bed that night, the CNN, Fox, somebody's on TV, you're getting updates from the storm, and then it's done, and then the power goes out, and they wake up the next morning, and they wake up to the light and that devastation. I mean, how does that water on the first floor?
They couldn't find out any information initially because the cell lines were down as well. So there's no telephone, they have no access to cars, and now the situation is that even people who have cars have no gasoline. They've been driving back and forth across the island, burning all the gasoline, and now they can't get to people, whereas before they may have been able to. But yeah, there's just no access to information. I was finally able to get through to my mom and tell her what I was seeing. I was in a similar situation as you, though. I live on the Upper East Side. So here are my parents struggling in an area, no power, complete devastation, looks like a war zone, and I'm sitting on the Upper East Side looking out my window saying, I don't even see severe rain. I don't see bad wind. I don't see any of this. So it really was like two simultaneously existing completely different worlds that are so close together but so far apart.